Motherhood Incorporated proudly presents Military Mom Talk Radio live on TogiNet.com. Co-hosted by Robin Boyd and Sandra Beck, the owner of Motherhood Incorporated. Military Mom Talk Radio is here with a powerful platform for women to discuss their ideas, issues, and concerns with respect to the military lifestyle. Military Mom Talk Radio encourages you to share your experiences of being a military wife and mother. This show is dedicated to educating your family about the many resources that are available in both the public and private sector, and we'll be sharing helpful information from women all over the world. We'll cover everything military, from helping a family member cope with post-traumatic stress disorder, to navigating government programs dealing with family issues, to the struggles of deployment, along with being a working mother both in and out of the home. This is Military Mom Talk Radio, and here are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and we've got a really cool show today, Rob. I'm so excited. We're going to be talking about perfectionism with Dr. Suzanne Phillips, and I think it goes so perfectly right now, because I was watching the Olympics this weekend and watching what was going on with Russia and, them trying to make their mark on the world, and when that, fifth ring didn't light up.
Oh, gosh.
I think the whole world was holding its breath going, oh, please let it light, because someone's going to be raked across the coals for that one.
I know. And with any event, no matter how big it is or how small it is, you want everything to go smoothly. And I think it's okay to say, what, one thing didn't go right. And we'll have to talk to Dr. Suzanne about this, because I think we get so tied up with things being just right, just perfect, that when something does kind of falter a little bit, then rather than say, okay, and let go of that one falter, we're not enjoying the other things that are the positive of whatever the event is.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a weird flip side, because in some spots of my life, I'm a huge perfectionist. I want things just so, especially in my cooking or, in certain things with my business, they have to be just so, or I'm really, really, just like Napoleon stomping around, the office. But then there's the good side of perfectionism, that I see in the Olympics, people are striving and striving and striving to do their best. But then there's that kind of wall you hit, if it's not perfect, why do it at all? And that's I shift, I'm like a race car with 3 gears. I'm like, perfectionism, why do anything at all? Oh, well, we can achieve this, hope. Perfectionist means, and it's exhausting.
It is. There's got to be a balance. Now, obviously, a brain surgeon has to be working with the most perfection. He can't say, oh, well, it's close enough and just go at it. But then on the other hand, there are other things that have to let go. And I think we as moms have to remember that we have so many hats that we have to wear. And as much as we want to do the best we can with every single aspect of our lives, whether we're splitting ourselves between parenting and business and being a good spouse or partner, and still being able to do some of the other things, there's got to be some give, and we've got to let ourselves be human sometimes. And so I think that's what Dr. Suzanne will definitely help us balance, is to find the best way to not drive yourselves crazy, because boy, you sure can.
Well, it is really easy because, perfection depends a lot on perception and what your expectation is.
Yes.
I always talk to my Air Force girlfriend down the street from me, and, she has 4 kids with celiac disease, all boys, very active.
Oh, gosh, yep.
She's full-time working mom, her husband's full-time, and, they have to deal a lot with public services, in the military services like I do, and it's really frustrating because you find that you have to ratchet back expectations, you have to pull back what is right. And that I
Mm-hmm.
think is the hardest thing for me. Like in my heart and mind, I know something's wrong and it
Yeah.
needs to be changed without a shadow of a doubt. And I will die for that belief. But then I go through the court system, the police system, the welfare system,
Right.
in trying to change something that's such an obvious wrong. And you can't, and you're completely powerless. And it's really hard in those situations. And, my military girlfriend down the street is having the same thing because she's wading through all sorts of red tape with, between benefits and treatments for her kids. And I know
Mm.
our systems are meant to do their best. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're somebody who does their best every day and you show up and you do what you're supposed to do, and these systems in place let you down, it's like it's not even perfectionism. It's like, what next? And
Yeah.
so that perfectionism, it can be for not only ourselves and our own personal achievements, but when you join the military and you have to participate in any of the social structures that are in place for your family, it's
Mm-hmm.
really, really difficult. And I know my perfectionist girlfriends, who are military wives, they just go bananas.
Oh, I'm sure, because like you say, this is beyond our control. There are certain things in our lives that we can control. There's a certain amount of things in our lives that we can impact. And then there are those things in our lives that we just can't do anything about. We can try, and like you say, you do your darndest to just hang in there and fight for what you think is right. But it's so hard when you just feel like you're losing a battle in one element. And I hope that Dr. Suzanne can sort of give us those little tips on how we can stay strong on those elements and feel more success in the elements we can control.
Well, and the one thing that I would love to talk to Dr. Suzanne about, when we have her on, because I know, Rob, you've called me on the carpet a few times in a very gentle and loving way about learning to let go. Because when you're somebody like me who's made their success in life, and I
Hmm.
think of so many of my Marine wife friends,
Oh,
they are
sure.
so tough, Rob. They are so strong, and they just dig their heels in and claw their way through, whatever needs to be done. And that tenacity is what we love about especially about our Marine Corps.
Of
But that
course.
doesn't translate well into letting go. Like, even as a
Mhm.
little girl, my dad would always say, "Oh my gosh, San, you're like a dog that won't give up the bone." And I'm like, "Ah, ah, 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 ah." But that's also a key component of success.
It's true. And I think sometimes that tenacity is what gets somebody sort of in front of the line, if you will. There are certain things that you do have to just dig in. For example, when my mom was going through some of the issues that she was going through health-wise, I would really stick to my guns and say, I won't accept this. You need to do that. And especially with some changes in Medicare, you do kind of have to do some homework before you sort of stick your heels in and say, all right, this is what they're telling us we can only do. But I don't want to do this. I want to do that. So it is finding the right path, and that takes extra effort. That's hard.
It is hard. And it's hard to know, like as a perfectionist, when to let go. Because,
Yep.
it's not as simple as just, oh, San, relax. Well, okay,
Mhm.
my brothers and sisters were in town for my dad's 80th birthday last weekend. And I realized that I am the least high strung of like seven people. And I was sitting in the living room. We were watching, I don't know what we were watching. Oh, we were watching the Super Bowl. And in there were I'm not kidding you, Rob, like 9 engineering degrees and me.
I'm
And
sorry to laugh.
oh, it was hilarious. Like my oldest brother, I was telling my one friend, Mark, I said my oldest brother, gave an itinerary of who's picking up who's staying where, who's staying in whose room, and he, I realized, like, being from a family of engineers and being me, a non-engineer,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
I have perfectionism on the low level end of
Hmm.
these, precise individuals. And, you put everybody together in a room and you expect them, to make a chip and dip platter. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, it sure is. And then we get into that whole personality type. If you've got somebody who's very type A and very inflexible, that's really hard to get someone to say, all right, this path isn't going to work, but that one is. If that wasn't, if they weren't going to be flexible to do whatever, that's really hard for that person to bend and be able to find the different path. It's sometimes it's just chip and dips, but sometimes we're talking life issues, and that's really hard.
It is. Well, and it's also ingrained in our learning system because in preparation for this show, Rob, I always turn to Max and Zach, my kids who are 7
Sure.
and 10, because they're really funny, and they sometimes they just say things and I'm like, duh, well, that's obvious. And one of the things that my son Max said, who's 10, he got a perfect score on his math state exam and got all these awards for it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Mom, he's like, every time there's a big test coming up, every time he goes, you send me 2 messages. And he didn't say it that way, but he's like, you tell me to do 2 different things. And I said, what is that? And he's like, well, you say I'll get a gold star, if I get a perfect grade. And then you say, well, just do your best.
Oh, interesting.
I know. I totally got called on the carpet on that one because I couldn't say anything. And he's like, which is it? Do you want me to get an A or do you want me to just do my best? Because he's like, sometimes my best isn't an A. And, and he says, that's confusing to me. And so I just gave him one of those ice cream pre-made ones, that are in the refrigerator and told him to go watch SpongeBob.
Oh, I think we have to be human to our kids every so often, and that's probably one of them. You know what, Max? You're right. And thank you for pointing that out to me. What do you feel better doing?
Right. You just tell me, you become the parent, But he was right. We do socially condition our kids, to get awards for being perfect. And then we turn around and go, well, do your best.
Mm-hmm. It's very true. It's very, very true. Well, Dr. Suzanne Phillips is going to be joining us shortly. We've got a break coming up, San. And, I did want to direct, I just have a real quickie thing. I want to direct people to the Blue Star Mothers website, which is bluestarfam.org. There's a scholarship coming up, and I wanted people, if they were interested in looking into the Tillman Military Scholarship, they can accept applications through March 6th. So if you want more information about that, go to bluestarfam.org. I had to get that in there. We have Dr. Suzanne coming on. She is a very highly noted psychologist, psychoanalyst. She is the author of 3 books and over 20 articles, and most recently she co-authored Healing Together, A Couple's Guide to Coping with Trauma and Post-Traumatic Stress. Join us in just a moment with Dr. Suzanne Phillips.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
Time and change are accelerating, making it increasingly difficult to gracefully go with the flow. Women Change the World presents conversations with featured guests about changes in their lives and how that change has created new and positive opportunities. Women Change the World with your host, Dr. Beth Golden, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central here on TogiNet.com. We all know that change can knock you off course, and Dr. Beth's show and practices focus on revealing everything that's right with you. This information will help you make choices that align your true nature and set you along your path of least resistance. As Dr. Beth says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. For more on Dr. Beth and her show, go to drbethgolden.com. That's drbethgolden.com. Women Change the World with your host, Dr. Beth Golden, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central, here on TogiNet.com.
Finally, a show that supports women who are in the midst of a transition in midlife. The show is Second Wind. Here's what certified coach, author, and host of Second Wind, Joyce Buford, wants you to know.
It's so empowering for women to hear about other women and their accomplishments.
We all need cheerleaders, someone who's on our side.
Second Wind is that program to help women connect with other women, hear other women's stories.
In a stressful world,
Find power in those stories.
learn to discover your passions and joys again. Create the life you want to live to the fullest. Join us for Second Wind with Joyce Buford, Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Central, right here on the TogiNet Radio Network.
We'll put a boot in your ass, it's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list, and a statue of liberty started shaking.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. Covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sail at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I am here with Robin Boyd, and we are welcoming Dr. Suzanne Phillips. And our topic today is perfectionism. And Rob, I loved our opening segment where we talked about perfectionism on both the parent and the child, and working within, the military system and the structures and, things that, when do you dig your heels in and when don't you? But I'd like to open with Dr. Suzanne Phillips, getting her take on what my son Max said. Hi, Dr. Suzanne. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Oh, I got to tell you, my kid stumped me this week when I was researching perfection. And I asked him, a little bit about that because he did get a perfect score on his state math exam, which was a great accomplishment for him. But he said to me, Mom, he said, you always tell me two things. And he's like, you tell me, to get a perfect score, get a gold star, get, 100%. And he's like, and then you turn around and tell me, well, just do the best you can. And he's like, that's really confusing. And he's like, I don't know what to do. And, I told Robin, I gave him an ice cream and told him to watch SpongeBob because I knew I could ask you later.
Okay.
But does perfectionism, do we teach our kids to be perfectionists or do they grow that way?
Well, there are some people who talk about the difference between adaptive perfectionism and maladaptive perfectionism. And it's kind of a little bit play on words, but maybe it'll help in this sense. When we talk about adaptive perfectionism, and I see it more as the drive to achieve, and to enjoy it along the way. But when we're talking about adaptive perfectionism, we're really talking about the ability to perform well with an acceptance of making mistakes, not having to be perfect all the time. Because maladaptive perfectionism means you have got to be perfect to feel okay. This is the type of kid who, if he really is learning the problems in math, can't catch on to it quickly, that's it. He's not turning in the paper. Or if, in fact, he had only scored in the 98th percentile, you were unhappy or he was unhappy. The kind of destructive perfectionism that we really want to move away from, because actually in the end it really impairs performance, achievement, passion, and an enjoyable life. The kind that we want to move away from is when we make perfection the criteria for being emotionally okay, for being loved, for being someone's friend, for being someone's spouse. Those are kinds of the differences.
I'm listening so intently in that having been in an educator's shoes, Max is exactly right. There are so many times that we're trying to encourage kids to do their best, and it is almost a self-imposed race, I guess you could say, because when we it's very difficult for parents not to compare their children. It's very difficult for us as adults not to compare. Well, gee, if this one can excel in this, why can't I? If this one can get the raise at the job, why can't I? If this one got promoted, why can't I? And it's very, very difficult for us to be able to find what's the right path for us individually.
Well, when we're talking about only looking at end results, we're usually wiping out the journey and the joy. I'll talk about my own kids for a minute. They were high performers in different ways and very good athletes, but for instance, in basketball, they loved basketball. So what did that mean? Well, I came from an all-female home, and now I was in the middle of an all-male home, only boys, only basketballs, the whole deal. But I think we wanted them to do well, but we also watched that they loved it, that every free minute there was a basketball under their arm, and they were so close in age, and every other boy in town, we had a full basketball court in our yard, was here. I think that's different than, in fact, if we needed them to do that. Because at any point, for instance, a coach said to my oldest son, play lacrosse. He tried it. He didn't like it. My younger son, they also pushed to play it. And I'd go to the field to pick him up, and he wouldn't be playing. He'd be sitting on the side. Now, this was someone who ran like a town race when he was 5 years old, so I knew. I thought, what could it be? I said, Chris, everybody wants you to play lacrosse. You're such a speedster. What do you think? He goes, I hate this game. I said, oh, okay. Why? Do you understand? He said, Mom, I don't like wearing this thing on my face. I can't see who anyone else is. They don't see who I am. I just want to play basketball. So that was it. Now, so I guess I'm saying this in the way that children who excel in things, they were math kids. Nobody could spell. Only I could spell. All right. So I think with children, if they excel in something and if they enjoy doing it, you've got a hit. If they are doing it only for you, it will burn out at some point. I think competition is a wonderful thing. I think, and we've all been parents on the lines. There are parents who are taking the game so seriously, they're yelling, and they're in a bad mood if the kids lose. Well, all the rest of us thinking, okay, we all had a good time. Next time, we know this team. So that I actually think we have to decide whose expectation it is and what's the downside of the child's involvement with the process. There's one family I know, the child's a piano, he's a prodigy. He loves playing the piano. He does not seem to feel at all like he's being deprived of playing other things. He loves the other kids who are musical. That's him. Now, if he was in a family where they were all playing football and they were forcing him to do that or dismissing his joy of music, that wouldn't be a good fit. That would mean he couldn't be his authentic self. So, I mean, I think, and one of the things I wrote about is when you want the person to be passionate and curious. I think those are much better traits than trying for the perfectionism. Because the kid who really loves writing, she really just keeps writing poems. She just loves it. There's a very good chance she's going to get an A in English and probably be very successful in that field. If the kid's doing it because she's got to get an A in everything, it can't work.
I think there's so many challenges that we as adults have, habits, I guess you could say, have learned, and it's very difficult to unlearn them. And I think what I kind of wanted to steer our conversation toward is some of the challenges that we as adults face that we may have thought we conquered as children. For example, if somebody has an injury or somebody has a change in their life, that adapting to that and feeling as though we are becoming successful, it could be losing weight, it could be stopping an addiction. It could be learning to walk on a prosthetic limb. It could be learning to begin again after losing a loved one. I think those are the things we I'd love to sort of get into a little bit of a conversation with that kind of adaptive flexibility or acceptance as adults.
Okay. I think that there's always a timeline with any of these situations, from the injury, the event, to at some point coming to be one with it. I think that's true of our injured vets, that's true of elderly people. But one of the things that I always invite people to do, and often we don't think of this at the time of the injury, is to consider what resiliency traits they actually have that they could bring forth to help them regulate their anxiety, think about how they're going to pursue things. Now, for instance, when we talk about resiliency traits, we're usually talking about being intellectual, having the ability to problem solve, social skills, being able to make friends in an elevator, being very, very comfortable calling somebody and using them as a resource, as well as giving and taking. For some people, spirituality. For some people, musical ability, artistic ability, athletic ability. Curiosity underscores all of those. Einstein says his main trait was not brilliance, it was curiosity. So I would say, and I'll think of times of being injured myself when the question was, how am I going to tolerate not running for 8 months? How will I tolerate this? And it was reminding myself, okay, you swim. You've got to figure a way to find a pool and swim, because you're going to substitute one for the other. Or I will say to people, and I did this myself, what did you postpone doing that you loved when you were all over the place and running and training and all of that? And it had to do with more writing, and it had to do with reading. So that one of the things I'm saying to people is see what, in fact, your resiliency can do for you in facing this hardship or this change in your life. If, for instance, you can't now drive yourself somewhere, are you going to be able to reach for a group of friends that are going to step up and help you? In which case, you may find that the 6 months or the 8 months that you were not driving turned out to be a very social time. If you now are going to have to use a prosthesis, what I would say, and I say to my patients all the time, and I used to say it to my kids, I say it to myself, when in doubt, if you're anxious about something new, be curious. How the heck is this going to work? Am I actually going to be able to get around with a prosthesis so that I'm as independent as I want? I heard that you can train dogs. Should I get a companion dog to help me with this? So in other words,
Dr. Suzanne, I'm curious on the other side of the break to take this further. We're with Dr. Suzanne Phillips. We've got a break coming up. Dr. Suzanne has worked, published, and presented nationally and internationally, and we are so fortunate to have her with us for this hour. We'll be back in a moment on Military Mom Talk Radio.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
Girlfriended is on TogiNet. Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, with your hosts Patty Wyatt and Lisa Jernigan. This show is your chance to share, learn, laugh, and connect with other women. The Girlfriended principle was born out of loss.
Lisa had recently had her mother pass away from cancer, and my mom was murdered. A man just walking into a room and started a 23-second shooting spree.
I think one of the things we both realized going through those tragedies that you can be extremely okay and be extremely sad.
Check out girlfriended.com. And then be a part of Girlfriended, the radio show. Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central.
You know, your boyfriend or your husband or whatever, they don't totally understand that emotional side to them like another woman does. And I think that's so important just to have somebody that you go, she gets me.
Check out the website, girlfriended.com. Don't miss Girlfriended with Patty Wyatt and Lisa Jernigan. Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com. Have you ever wondered why America is facing such a healthcare crisis? Then join us for Dr. Peter DeVette Live every weekday at 1 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com. He'll answer your health care and medical questions and share with you his knowledge and opinions on topics ranging from holistic health care to spirituality and wellness. You'll find out about the roots of your health care challenges versus symptom management, the holistic approach, how the spirit, mind, and body connection is critical in both the development of illness and the solution to illness, how emotions are directly related to physical illness, and how to read your body like a book. Dr. DeVette will also go through your personal questions and how you can navigate through the illness maze. Supplements, medications, therapies, treatment options, surgeries, all kinds of things related to your health. Dr. Peter DeVette Live, every weekday at 1 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on TogiNet.com, covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sale at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd, and our guest today is Dr. Suzanne Phillips, and our topic today is perfectionism, both in children and adults, and we're going to specifically talk this second half of the show about adapting to a new normal. Many of our military families have to become adept very quickly at adapting to a new normal, and this could be an adaptation to a new base, a new location. They could have a PCS move. You could have to adapt to a new country. You, as a family, have to adapt when your family member goes on deployment. You have to adapt again when they come home. Change is such a big part of the military family, and our perfectionism, our estimations of what things should be, can really affect how we adapt to our new normal. Now, for those of you that missed the first half of the show, I'd like you to check us out on iTunes under Military Mom Talk Radio. You can also reach us at our host station out of Texas, which is TogiNet, TogiNet.com, or you can check us out in over 150 hours of free military family friendly programming provided to you by Military Mom Talk Radio at our .com by the same name. Now, let's get back to Dr. Suzanne Phillips, and we were talking about adapting. And Dr. Suzanne, we've had a lot of shows in the past that talk about it's so important to adapt to the new normal, accept your new normal. And I can tell you that sounds really easy, but in practice, it can be a big challenge. And for somebody like me, you know, Robin and I have had many discussions about having to adapt. I've had to adapt to a single lifestyle, had to adapt to the loss of my mother, adapt to a new environment, a new state, things like that. And I didn't do it really well because I had trouble letting go. And I talked to a lot of my military friends who have to adapt a lot, and they say, oh, well, you get better at it the more you do it. But nobody could give me any really good tips about how do you let go and embrace the new normal?
Okay, big question. Well, there's a few things that come to mind when we think of it, because it's funny, we many people do use that. One of the reasons, and maybe this relates, that one of the obstacles is exactly what you say, Sandy, and that is change is very difficult, and change when it's imposed, when it wasn't chosen, often feels even harder to deal with. One of the things we assume, often incorrectly, is that change is going to be for the worse. And what we've seen even with trauma is, and post-traumatic growth is, unbeknownst to us, sometimes the change we fought the most and resisted the most was really quite a gift. I say to people sometimes, this is the journey from oh my God to thank God. And it's a strange one, but the only way that one can get to the thank God is patiently walking it and slowly accepting the new normal. Now, sometimes people, all of us, do just what you say. There's a yearning. People will say to me, I want the life I had. I want my partner back. I want to live where I used to live. Now, that's real, and it's terrific to share it. But if you keep your eye behind you on the past, you will not know the road in front of you. So I say to people, we usually have a road in which we've got to mourn a little bit about what changed and what we lost, but we've got to keep looking forward because we really don't know what the new normal is going to bring. Now, sometimes we're thrust into new roles, whether from deployment, from injury, from the loss of a parent, the loss of a spouse, and the thought is, oh my God, I know very well what this is. This is a nightmare. I'm a single parent, I've got to work, I've got kids, and so usually that creates a great deal of anxiety. And that's where I would say one of the best things that we need for the new normal is regulating our anxiety. And one thing that I say to people and I use is what I call working solutions. There's an urge to think, oh my God, what am I going to do? What's the answer? Very rarely, and this is a problem in the corporate world, does someone shout out the brilliant, perfect, gonna work answer. It seems that the way we think and the way things unfold is to keep saying to your kids, yourself, your partner, the other women in the group who are working with you, let's come up with a working solution with the idea we're going to revisit it and then tune it, fine-tune it. And I think that often works with children. It works with seniors. So often I would plan something with my mom, who was very elderly. She's deceased at this point, that I thought was perfect. And when I got there, nope, not going to work at all. But a version of it could work. So same thing with an injury. You think you could try something, going to work, not quite, but a little bit of it works. So one thing to regulate anxiety is think about working solutions. Also think about creativity. I think that, I remember this, you may have heard of the mom who, she had 2 sons, her husband was deployed, and the thought was, oh my God, the dinners are going to be a nightmare. And then they came up with dinner with the morons, the morons, it's funny, Moran's family every night. And they invited the chaplain, and they invited local politicians, and they invited everyone and everything and that they could think of, and the local paper started carrying what it was like to have dinner with this family. So thinking outside of the box is another way to sometimes deal with the new normal. The piece about mourning the past is often very important for kids. If every time a kid says, but I do wish Daddy was still here, or I do wish we still lived near that schoolyard, I think we have to give people room to put words to that. I think if we can say, I do miss that schoolyard, or I miss him too, or I miss when we were on that base, I think we allow a very normal feeling, which is that in life we're very often mourning things as we are being enriched by new things.
This sort of brings up a perspective that actually my husband Steve and I just talked about the other day. Over the weekend, I had to go to a funeral, the loss of a young girl, 13 years old, to cancer. And one of the things that my husband's point of view was, it's got to be so hard for the family to be strong for the other children in the family. And I said, I rather disagree in that it's all right, I think, for parents to have some humanity, that parents can express their sadness to help the children know that it's okay to have these feelings without getting like overly consumed with them. And I'm sure that this would take place in many instances if either there was an injury or there was a move, that you can't do anything about that. And should the parents remain really, really strong and not show a tear and not show a cry, or should they sort of express to their children, you know, I'm feeling this way too? And is that part of helping children learn how to mourn?
Well, the second is really what I would align with. In fact, what we call it is when, often if there is a death of a sibling, or we call it disenfranchised grief, meaning children read parents very quickly. If nobody's talking about the loss of a sister, the loss of a grandma, the loss from change, daddy's injury, that means they're not going to talk about it. That means they carry it. And we say what's not the unspoken outs itself in some way, be it as a physical symptom, a problem in school, their own depression. So I'm with you in that we've got to make room. I mean, I worked with so many groups of 9/11 moms who Dad was gone, and we talked about, can you cry in front of the children? We talked about that being fine. We talked about it's okay to cry, it's okay to miss, it's okay to write down things you remember about Dad, and it's also okay to laugh. So that I would agree that we can't have parents disown their parental role in the grief state of having lost one of their children. On the other hand, everybody's got to be able to grieve openly and know that grieving's not incompatible with going on.
Well, I'm going to back you up there like 100%, Suzanne, because, you know, when my mother died, she was very sick for 5 years with cancer, and my kids were in and out of the hospital with me. They saw her lose her hair. They saw her come home and recover from, you know, her mastectomy, then her other mastectomy. And one of the things that I saw, and I will never forget this, is that I was driving in the car one day shortly after my mom died, and I was thinking about my mom, and I was so sad, and I was driving, you know, so there was just like, you know, tears rolling down my face while I concentrated on driving. And my kid in the back seat looked up in the rearview mirror, and he's like, Mommy, are you okay? And all I said was, you know, I was just thinking about Grandma, and I'm sad. That's all. And the relief on his face, because I swear he thought he did something wrong. And I don't know if that's what kids do, but if I explain to my kids, look, I miss Grandma, or I'm sad, like on Christmas Day, I'll be a little sad, or I'll tell them ahead of time, Grandma's birthday's coming up, we're going to make a cake. And I said, Mommy's probably going to cry because that's what she does. You know, and when they know what's going on, it takes the fear out of it. That's just what I saw from my experience.
Absolutely. It's called making meaning, and it's also called being human. And the next step to it, which I think is so precious because it's true of little ones as well as big ones like mine, is that the fact that at times we give them an opportunity to step up and put their arm around us is a gift to them. Because it empowers them at a time when people are feeling helpless or like, what do we do? So, you know, I see my big guys were supporting me when I lost my mom in such a precious way. But I think that's the gift your little guy had, and that's the gift they had, that they actually can make a difference in soothing us a little bit.
I agree. That's so perfect. We're talking today with Dr. Suzanne Phillips. She is an author. She is a media person. Suzanne, we'll talk on the other side of the break where people can find you and hear more about you. And we're so glad that you're with us today on Military Mom Talk Radio. Again, find us all of our shows. We've had Dr. Suzanne on before, so you'll certainly want to check out some of our past shows that we've had with Dr. Suzanne on iTunes and at Military Mom Talk Radio. And on the other side, we'll talk just a little bit more about our discussion on perfectionism. And it is so difficult sometimes to let go. And what we're doing right now is finding the best path to help us on our way to our new normal. Dr. Suzanne will catch you on the other side of the break.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
Mobile is the future, and the future is now. Listen in each week, Tuesdays 4 to 5 Central, to Brilliant Mobile Marketing with your host, Mobile Mary, as we simplify the hottest marketing channel, mobile marketing, and share secrets on how you can use mobile to be more brilliant, be more profitable, and have more fun in your industry. Join us each week to learn from brilliant business leaders on how to simply and easily capture a list of raving fans and turn them into loyal customers. This show will help business owners, authors, and speakers realize their own brilliance by tapping into the insights of fellow brilliant business leaders. We will also showcase brilliant tools, both traditional and digital, that will make you more brilliant in everything you do. Don't miss your date with brilliant mobile marketing and your host, Mobile Mary, America's mobile marketing expert, as she shares her success strategies every Tuesday from 4 to 5 Central on the Rockstar Radio Network. Finally, a show that supports women who are in the midst of a transition in midlife. The show is Second Wind. Here's what certified coach, author, and host of Second Wind, Joyce Buford, wants you to know.
It's so empowering for women to hear about other women and their accomplishments.
We all need cheerleaders, someone who's on our side.
Second Wind is that program to help women connect with other women, hear other women's stories.
In a stressful world,
Find power in those stories.
learn to discover your passions and joys again. Create the life you want to live to the fullest. Join us for Second Wind with Joyce Buford, Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Central, right here on the TogiNet Radio Network.
We'll put a boot in your ass, it's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list, and a statue of liberty started shaking.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. Covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sale at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Red, white, and blue.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and our guest today is Dr. Suzanne Phillips, and we are talking about how to adjust to a new normal, how to let go, how perfectionism gets in our way, a whole lots of things, but they're all intertwined. Dr. Suzanne, I would love to get your take on how is it that we can know that something's wrong? Because like years ago, Robin said to me, San, I love you, but you need to work on letting some of this go. And I didn't know that at the time, and it was really great advice. I'm so proud of Robin for being a good friend and telling me what she thought, so I could identify, because you can't know what you don't know. I knew I was suffering, I knew I was frustrated, but I didn't know what was wrong. Do you have any tips or anything to help us identify, when we need to reach out for help or when we need to make changes, whether it's adaptive or have to do with our own perfectionist or our kids? How do we know when something's wrong?
Okay, so just as a first step, we say you always work from the body out. So sometimes our body, they say when some part of you keeps telling you something's wrong and you ignore it, eventually your body screams. So the first thing is we just take a look at body rhythms. How are you sleeping, eating? Are you doing things that you always liked and getting pleasure from it? Are you able to do something that absolutely takes you into a zone? Are you someone who always does a puzzle, a crossword puzzle? Do you have a stress-reducing ritual you do every day? So on a very first step basis, take a look at how you regulate stress, and are you sleeping, eating, and are you focused on the moment, or do you find yourself preoccupied? Do you keep making the wrong turn when you're driving? Do you find that you can't even quite listen to any music because you're so in your head or you're so agitated, nothing seems right? So sometimes there's a self-observation that'll say, I'm off. I lost my keys 5 times. I've been in a fender bender. Something's not right. The other thing that I think allows us to take a look at it is exactly how do we feel when we wake up in the morning? Do you feel like, hey, I wonder what's going on today, or okay, or oh my God, another day? So what is your mood like when you start your day? Now that takes into account there are morning people and night people, but the question is existentially, what's your day like? The other thing I say to people are you able to take what I call healthy risks? Have you tried anything new? We say that people who are able to take healthy risks are some of the happiest people. Have you met a new friend? Have you decided to try a new recipe? Have you thought that maybe you can be a little bit more creative in something? When you're really suffering, you don't have any energy to spare. You are literally trying to get through every day, trying to remember the keys, trying to get through to the laundry. So that would be my first answer, and that is self-observation on a number of levels, Sandy.
And I think sometimes it's also some fear or denial, because we don't want to think that we're not doing as good a job in our lives as we should be. Whether it means just going to a regular doctor for a checkup, and I have to raise my hand here, I've been guilty of that, or whether it means something a little bit more serious, because sometimes we just can't get ourselves on that path. And how do we get rid of that fear so that we can get ahead and go where we need to be going?
Well, let's normalize it just like we did the grief for starters. If your life has changed and all of a sudden the unexpected has happened, which has made us feel like, hey, this is not a great scene, the oh my God feeling, the fact that you feel anxious or you feel, somewhat off, makes sense. The question is, how are you going to normalize that, as we say, and move beyond it? One thing we do say, and you said it happened with you and Robin, the most endorsed intervention for someone when life changes suddenly is connection with their networks of support, their best friends, their work buddies, their brothers and sisters, etc., because those people know you. In the military, in the uniformed services, we often talk about buddy care. You can have a million psychologists and psychiatrists and disaster mental health workers. It's the person next to you that knows if you're off, because if you were the one who always told jokes and you're not telling them anymore, or you loved music and you haven't mentioned it, that person's going to know. So you use buddy care. You use networks of support. And then the denial is big, but, every time we do things like that, they're usually human attempts to deal with suffering. You don't want to believe, like, you're feeling as overwhelmed as you are. So we deny it, but it always outs itself because, I think of times when I've done that, I'm always lost, or my keys are lost, or something, or I put the cream cheese in a drawer and can't find it, and I know this is not working for you, Sue. So I think the self-observation and the invitation of feedback, just as you guys did from your networks of support, we think that sometimes just being in the company of people you love, doing not much of anything, is really a regulator of stress, and that you need a dose of that, maybe more than just a little dose of that when you're going through hard times or new times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Dr. Suzanne. This weekend I had my dad's 80th birthday party, and my mom has passed on, and my family's back east, and they had already gone home, and so my girlfriends came over, and they all brought something for my dad, and it was cute. It was like popcorn, some turtles, some taffy, just something to brighten his day. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, I felt more filled up, like spiritually and emotionally filled up inside. And yeah, I ate a lot of popcorn, so I was physically filled up too. But I noticed that was one of the first nights that I went to bed that I didn't have either like a headache or my jaw aches, because I have the floating phantom stress. Like if I notice I'm stressed and it's too much stress in my back, I'll stretch it out, but I don't deal with the solution, so it moves to my jaw. Or sometimes I'll chew on the side of my mouth. I have really, probably to me, they seem like weird indicators, but I know I have certain physical things I do when I'm under anxiety or stress.
Okay.
But the biggest one that I noticed that I do, and I think a lot of people do it, is I withdraw. And it was so long since I had been together with these 4 or 5 girls who live, honest to God, 20 feet away, one of them. There's no excuse. Our kids are the same age. And we all just sat in the room and laughed and talked. And my dad told silly stories about when I was a little girl. It was nothing special, nothing expensive, but I felt so good. I felt so like that love tank guy, why my love tank was all filled. But we don't do that. And by the time we do reach out for help, a lot of times we're so depleted. So I think one of the good meters, and it might be opposite of what people think you should do, is when you're really happy, take a minute and figure out why and go, okay, well, I'm going to do this again because this really filled me up. Because I think sometimes we all focus on everything that depletes us. And I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm not the shrink.
It makes a lot of sense because we say we focus on the positives, and they're like a little bit of guideposts along the way. But the point you said before that really needs to be underscored is there is a tendency right across the board to avoid when you're frightened, when you don't feel good, when you're depressed, when you're grieving. And it's okay to have private time, but I'll say to people, I've used it myself, I've suggested it to my kids, of course you don't feel like going to the party. You could always come home. Just get there. You can always meet your friend for lunch and say, this is coffee because I'm really a little... Just get there. Inevitably, it's the experience you had, Sandy. People fill each other up. And it's an important place. And some people, okay, if you're not that much of a people person, let's suppose you're a pet person. I have encouraged people, just take your dog to the dog park. He needs it. I don't care if you talk to the other pet owners. Inevitably, it's a good thing. Just get out and connect with whatever helps you connect. If you are not just a face-to-face person, go to church. Go to a soup kitchen. Do something, even if you don't feel like it. Networks of connection they're important across the board for everything we're talking about, from easing perfectionism to the new normal to knowing when we're off or sad or unhappy and we need a little bit of a dose of friends.
Oh, Dr. Suzanne, we're wrapping up the show. I can't believe the hour has flown. Where can people find more about you?
Okay, well, for one thing, I'm on the new site with Sandy, Bouncing with Style. You'll see some of my blogs there. It's a beautiful site, Sandy.
It is.
And my radio show, I'm hosting Psych Up on Casozo Radio. It's weekly. Just go to Psych Up on Casozo Radio. A really good podcast that's up now for women is why do women tend to overdrink when they hit some of these rough spots? And do they even realize they're doing it? It's a really good show. Read any of my over 200 blogs.
I do love your shows. They are just so insightful, and you have so many.
Hello?
And I do want to spell out, I think my feed kind of went out in and out there. I want to spell Casozo because that's Cozoso. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Casozo. And is it .com?
Cosozo. Cosozo.
Thank you. Okay. We had to make sure we got that right.
Suzanne Phillips, Psych Up. Cosozo, however you spell it, you're going to come to the shows. And we have we've had some really fun guests, really interesting folks. And the blogs, I think most people enjoy them. That's Healing Together on Psych Central. Again, just put in Suzanne Phillips, Healing Together on Psych Central, and the blogs will pop up. I tweet at Healing4 Couples, and my website where I post things and other presentations I've done is Healing Together for Couples, www.healingtogetherforcouples. You can contact me by email at psychup, Suzanne Phillips at psychup@casozo.com. I look forward to speaking with you. I hope to be back on your wonderful show because I think you do a great job, ladies.
Oh, Dr. Suzanne, thank you so much. Suzanne Phillips has been our guest today. By all means, check her out on all of those resources as well as Military Mom Talk Radio. We hope you'll join us next week. Thanks, everyone.